Hello. I think it's going to be a ranty one. So, let's get a couple of things out the way right away. The book's editing is finally finished. It's just waiting for the cover, which should be done probably over the weekend. So, most likely, as of next week, you shall have the brand new orbital bombardment of the Catholic Church. Now, tonight I'm talking about racism, the idiocy of flat earthers, and we'll see if something else comes up. So, on flat earthers, they bother me. Their stupidity is so massive that it just irritates me. Luckily, I don't have to spend any time dealing with them because really, if you're a flat earther and you try and bring that topic up here, you will just go away, go somewhere else. But there is a very, very patient man, Professor Dave, who's just done another little video, which is only like 10 minutes maybe, I don't know, something like that. Very simple, and he has the patience of a saint because he bothers to explain to you about the Southern Cross, the Northern Star. I mean, these are things that, to be fair, to me are obvious. So that's why when a flat earther comes up and says, oh, but the earth is flat, I was like, just bugger off. The Greeks could figure out that the earth was round thousands of years ago. And how did they do that? Again, just by looking up in the sky. If like myself you've lived in the northern hemisphere and in the southern hemisphere, and if like myself you know a little bit about astronomy, then you'll know that in the southern hemisphere you can see the Southern Cross, which I actually know how to find. I know how to find through south using the stars. I know how to find through north using the stars. And Polaris is in the north. So, that would only make sense. The fact that you can only see those stars from the northern hemisphere and you can't see them from the southern hemisphere and vice versa already tells you that you're not on a flat earth. And that the idea of the dome doesn't make any sense. But anyway, it's a 10-minute video. I'll put the link below on the notes for this video. So just go and watch Professor Dave. And if after you've seen that, you still insist that the earth is flat, I think you should walk off the end of it. That's just how I feel about it. So that's that. Now racism. I mean, the whole Black Lives Matter stuff is going on. And, people have been accusing people of racism, for decades now, I think. See, the thing about racism is it's very interesting. How do you define it? How do you actually define racism? Because at its most basic level, you can define racism simply as noticing differences and making a value judgment based on those differences. And guess what? Every human being does that. If you've got a functioning brain and any kind of half functioning of the five senses, you will do value judgments based on the differences that you notice. Now, these differences have various connotations. Now, of course, some of them are based in reality, some are based on your personal experience, some of them are based on your personal prejudices. So, what might be racist to you could be very different to what's racist to me. For example, have I been treated different because I'm not English? Yes. Have I been treated different because I'm not black? Yes. Have I been treated different because I didn't speak Afrikaans? Yes. Were all of these ways that I was treated positive or negative? Both. I've had positive interactions because of the color of my skin and the fact that I'm Italian, and I've had negative interactions because of the color of my skin and the fact that I'm Italian. So, Venetian, but most people don't know the difference. So, what does it actually mean? Can you actually define racism? And it's a fuzzy line, because how do you define it? The way I would try and define it would be, when you make a value judgment on somebody purely based on their external appearance of apparent ethnicity, which is overwhelmingly negative, and even then it's a pretty fuzzy thing, because what do you mean by overwhelmingly negative? what you mean by apparent ethnicity. So it's a very fuzzy line. Now, I'm going to react quite differently to you if you're part of a group of 4 or 5 guys, all dark-skinned, wearing bandanas and like what looks like gang colors, all effing and blinding and looking pretty boisterous, and you're all under 30, and you're walking towards me and say my wife and my baby. Well, chances are that if you look at me wrong or you just start something, it's going to go badly for somebody somewhere. The same is not going to apply if you are 4 or 5 and the 30s, also wearing what could be described as gang colors, also perhaps in a state of slight intoxication, but you all happen to be women, perhaps on a Hindu. You're not going to get punched in the face if you make a bad remark at me being a drunk woman that's with her friends on a night out. If you're a gangster trying to prove a point, you probably will get a lot worse than a punch in the face if that's what you're trying to do. And you're threatening people I care about. So it's a value judgment, right? Now, if you're hanging around people with gang colors, with a bandana, and trying to act tough, and you get treated a certain way by, say, a policeman, well, guess what? That's on you. That's life. So I think most people watching this channel don't really need to have reality explained to them. But I want to get into what I suppose, I hate the word, but is nuanced. For example, I'm going to take the example of Vox Day. Vox is accused of being a racist for decades, I think now. Do I believe that Vox is a racist? Well, first of all, that's his business. But, for the hypothetical, no, I wouldn't class Vox as what I would necessarily define as racist. Why? First of all, because he's not actually white. Secondly, because I've seen him interact with people personally, and he does not treat people badly purely based on what appears to be their race. I'm actually very convinced of that for a very simple reason. One of the first times I met him in Paris when we did the Gamergate thing, meetup, Vox had quite a reasonably hired security for the event. And I spotted him coming in because I've done security myself. And then I had a quick chat with one of them and so on. And I saw Vox instructing them at some point. Well, as far as I can remember, there might have been one of them might have been a white guy. But as far as I can remember, none of the other guys was white-skinned. They were either a mix of something or, I wouldn't want to guess at what their ethnicity was, but it certainly wasn't Caucasian flat out. Now, why would a supposed white supremacist hire people of color to be his security and the security of the people that he's meeting, who are all, by the way, supposedly also, crazy Nazis or something? It doesn't make any sense, right? And no, it would be wrong to think that somebody like Vox is racist. He's not. He's a very objective person. The thing is that he also points out, he observes, he notices absolutely blatantly obvious things, statistics, and he's a guy that keep in mind, I think, if I'm not wrong, I think Vox majored in economics, which, it's a thrill-a-minute ride, that, but, he enjoys looking at the details of things, and he's quite patient, and he reads tomes that I find quite boring just for fun. So, when he's looking at statistics on crime and on stuff like that, it's quite obvious that there is a disparity between different ethnic groups. And, I've lived in Africa for 25 years. I can tell you that, in various different African countries, your average African from Africa behaves in a way that is quite different from your average Caucasian in Europe. You know, is it always the same? No. Are there exceptions? Yes. But generalizations are still facts. Again, this is not surprising to anybody that's got a functioning brain cell, but it is interesting because you need to test your own little ideas and theories and so on. And I guess I was lucky in that I grew up in a very varied background. You know, we went to a school which was very mixed. It had everything in there. It had from Scandinavians to Muslims to various tribes of black Africans and various tribes of white Europeans. And we did find there was a general tendency for certain groups to hang out together. Now, the particular group I hung out with was rather mixed in the sense that we had people from sort of a little bit from everywhere, and we did hang out with other groups. But generally speaking, we did find that the Swedish people would tend to hang around with the Swedish and the Norwegians. The Italians and the Greeks used to hang around together. The random Englishman would hang around with whoever. You know, the random black guy would hang around with whoever because maybe he was also from a different tribe. So, and it was an interesting way to grow up because it gave you a different perspective on many different cultures. By and large, the biggest sort of separation was both cultural and religious. I mean, very few of the Muslims hung out with anybody but Muslims. Very few of the Motswana hung around with other, on a regular basis with other people who weren't Motswana. So it was quite interesting. But at the same time, we all pretty much got along. And one of the things that made us get along was the fact that we took no prisoners. I mean, if you could make fun of a guy because of his name, because of how he looked, because of his religion, because of anything, we would. The Sikhs would take the piss out of them because they had turbans and big bearded hair that became their turbans. We couldn't quite figure out how that worked. Everybody was taking the piss out of everybody, and we all lived quite comfortably with each other. If you expand that into a global thing, that means good, strong nations with good, strong borders and polite guests. And that is how I think it will eventually break down along those lines. Unfortunately, in order to create those sort of situations, in Europe we did that over 1,000 years or so, and we killed a whole bunch of people to get there. Then we relaxed, and now it's all mixed up together again, and it'll have to happen again. In America, I think it's already happening. It started. And it's an unfortunate but very real situation, which again brings me around in a big loop to the stuff that I've been talking about for about a year, which is Catholicism, creating Catholic communities, and the fact that there are embryonic forms of these already taking place. Now, if this new book of mine, which is out imminently, has any effect on cradle Catholics, I think it will definitely speed up the whole process of people waking up to the reality of the Novus Ordo Church. However few people read it, it is going to make ripples. I'm absolutely certain of that because I have essentially replied to every single one of the objections to Catholicism by the Novus Orchians, the Churchians and their colleagues and, shall we say, people who travel on the same path. There has literally been left no stone unturned in proving the point that the fake Novus Ordo Church is not the Catholic Church. So I hope it'll be well received, and we'll see how that goes. All right, and remember, if you're a flat earther, find the edge and jump off. Good night.